Okay, I think this should work. Um, so I don't even do this, and to be honest, I wanted to have. I had a funny little idea that was gonna make this like more fun and like kind of a cool, quirky idea that isn't just like. Let me turn down the volume on this probably.
Arriving at Antarctic Peninsula.
So yeah, let me just turn on the volume. But I had like an idea that I thought would be funny. But I don't think I'll be able to do that. See, I think I might just turn down the sound completely. But so I don't think I'll be able to do that. Actually, I'll put it on a tiny bit just for fun, these too. But I was gonna have like since this on talking to crows or whatever, I was gonna have like a little crow soundboard where there could be like a sound of like a crow laughing sometimes when I do something funny. Maybe I'll figure it out and I'll edit it in if I do that. Or like a crow like gasping, something shocking is talked about for some reason. But I'm not really um I think I just am bored a lot and I feel like I think about a lot of stuff, so I might as well do a random thing like this. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm not one of those people I'm not like just trying to I don't know. I'm not obsessed with myself. I'm just trying to have interesting discourse, I guess. Or I guess like speak my mind a little bit online. Kind of create like like an archive of what I was thinking about and stuff. Anyways, right now what I'm thinking about, which is funny, I was at a Blade show, obviously. If you look on my page, there's a bunch of those videos. Um, and honestly, it was really fun. Like, and it made me sad that I didn't know the music better because I was just like a little bit out of the Blade loop for a second. But to be honest, like he's doing a good job. Like, apparently this is his first time kind of planning his own tour under his label. I didn't even know he had a label called Trash Island. So I guess he's kind of doing shit on his own. I don't know what's going on with year 0001. I don't feel like there was any kind of crazy drama, but it's interesting to see Blade going his own way like that, you know? And I think a lot of people are kind of in music trying to be more independent. And it's not to say that it's bad to like work with people to get to where you like want to be, you know? It's just kind of like eventually once you can make it on your own, it almost like it's like a legacy thing. Like you start being able to create for other people what you had built for you, you know, like the structures that allowed you to get where you are. You start to like a label, like maybe he's gonna sign some other, and it's not gonna be like a new drain getting situation, but definitely, you know, if we like this artist and his vision, I think we might like the type of artist that he wants to see, you know, coming up under his label. If that's the direction they even end up going, I don't know how it really works in music. Um, but honestly, just the show was really fun. I think a lot of people had really. I think it's funny. Like a lot of people had merch. Makes me feel like it's like Taylor Swift is like the only other person who has that many people who shows up to her shows in her merch. But that's probably not true. But I was like shocked, honestly, and people really like. For the most part, I would say there was like a good vibe. You know, obviously people talk about the stink of the Blade shows and the crowds being really weird, and there's tweakers, there's like strange substances. There were cigarettes in the crowd at the Warfield, which is kind of crazy a little bit. The Warfield is like kind of like to me always been this like uppity kind of. I feel like I went there once to see like an old person show, so I always thought of it like an old person venue, but I don't think it actually is. I think it's just like a kind of older venue that's kind of fancy. But just to see people smoking in there was really funny to me, honestly. Um, the music was good. Like I honestly liked it, and it sounded really good on their speakers. That's what I liked. But I actually ended up going alone. It was kind of sad. I was supposed to go with a friend. But they couldn't go with me because they had like a test the next day, and I don't really know. It was just kind of like a complicated situation, and we only decided to go to the show like 2 or 3 days before. Like, I thought they were sold out for the longest time, but I guess like towards the day of the show, some people realized they couldn't go and like started signing their tickets or something. But it was really cool. I was like, you know what? I might as well still go, and like I was kind of like worried it would be lame because I was going alone. Um, but I just felt kind of cool and mysterious, and it wasn't like that bad uh of a trip, I guess, even though I was going from kind of far. But like I knew kind of the trip, and I was the one driving and kind of like making all the plans anyway, so it wasn't like I had to re-plan anything differently. It was more just like I was like gonna have a different experience, I guess, obviously, because I was going alone versus with someone. But I think at the end of the day, it was definitely worth it to go. Like I wouldn't have wanted to miss that because it was just kind of like I don't even go to shows a lot, so it's kind of like a really nice reminder that I like that sort of energy and like I don't know, being in a crowd and like having, for better or for worse, like a lot of people with different like vibes and kind of like different, you know, experiences with the content that you're all enjoying. I also felt had a really funny experience where I was like during Young Sherman's set at the beginning, before like Blade, I kind of like being there alone, I was able to hold my camera in this strange way where my body was like very very sharp at one angle, and it wasn't like I was like sharp like I would hurt people, but sharp in the sense of like when I knew people weren't like here together that were in front of me, I could just position myself very sleekly and non-problematically, and I wasn't like bothering anybody. It was just kind of like a slithering motion towards the front. And during I think it's like the 18-minute video that I posted of the Young Sherman set, you can see that I like go from being from like way like pretty far, not far back, but like a good amount back, to being like one of the first, like in the front like 3 rows probably, which is pretty crazy to me. Like I didn't expect to be getting that close when I didn't like camp or anything. I got there like at the time that the show started, like probably like 15 minutes before I was like at the in the line, which is kind of cool. And I was pretty happy that I got to, to get to the very front. Like I felt really cool being there, and I was like, I don't know, to some extent, I almost felt like I was like getting a really an amazing experience that I wouldn't have gotten if I had been with someone else because I couldn't have crawled up to the front like that, you know? Because it was just kind of how did I get stuck like that? That's funny. But it was just kind of like the slithering motion was very easy because of the fact that I was alone and I was kind of like this incognito like loner. And I am glad that I was like, you know, not like held back, I guess. And so I do wish I went with someone for the sake of like sharing that experience, you know. But I'm not mad that I ended up sneaking my way up there for myself. Anyways, but I think overall, just like interesting to see that they're moving that way. I think Blade looked like healthy and good. I don't think he's been doing drugs, if I'm being honest. I mean, that's crazy for me to say. I don't know these people, but like I saw them like walking out at the end. I was like with some people trying to get some stuff signed, but like I don't know. I felt like they all looked like they were like having a good time and like lively and like honestly, the people here like in their school were really celebrating them. Like it felt like a very nice and like uplifting, not like uplifting, but like happy, like a supportive community for Blade, if I'm being honest. But that was kind of bad of me. But I do think that I've said enough about that. I did also really like, it was actually while I was at the show that the remix album by Charli XCX dropped. I think obviously nobody needs to be talking more about Charli XCX than people already are. There's way too much going on. But I personally just think it was better. I liked like the production more. I liked the features. I think everybody online has a lot of like food for content, you know. But at the end of the day, it is also, I think, like an artistically masterful body of work. And even more so with these remixes and like the way that they kind of bring different people's aesthetics and talents musically, you know, and their energies and what they bring to their communities is kind of being like represented. I don't think it's like a feature album where people are losing their shine in any way to kind of fit the aesthetic of the album. Um, so it definitely makes me happy to see that these artists are being celebrated, even though Charli XCX is like, you know, this big. I don't know if she is a Leo. I think she is. This big Leo taking up the whole space, you know. Bye, the game is done. That was embarrassing. But I don't think I did that bad, to be honest. Let's see what they say. But what was I thinking? But yeah, I did just kind of like to see, and even there was a Blade feature. It was kind of funny, like, but it was like a really wide variety, and I think it was cool to see that, like that kind of giving back from an artist like Charli XCX that I feel like really rose to fame. Obviously, she had her own kind of things, but she's one of those artists that really rose to fame, like kind of, I'm not piggybacking, but like with other people who are already famous, giving her that kind of like feature or that like co-production. And it was a really, I feel like there's a really social vibe to her where like, people even like the kind of party aesthetic, and it's this idea of like, being so cool that like you can kind of live this lifestyle that you want to live, and you can sing about it, and you know, and you throw parties and people show up, and I think that's kind of like one of the things I hear people talk about a lot, like in fashion. I think this was like Malik Saka, like SXY.LK on like Instagram or something, talking about something like this, where like Mowalola, the designer, who's been like who designed like the wet tank top, but also has been really designing for like I think about like probably like 10 maybe less years, and doing some really kind of like I would say a little bit boundary pushing in some ways. I mean, obviously people push the boundaries all the time, but it's stuff that feels aesthetically nice, even though it is really weird. I think is part of it. But more than that, there's this kind of aesthetic about her that, and this ties to what I was saying about Charli XCX, where she kind of represents this big party that's happening in the celebrity world, and that's kind of what this I don't know this person this mind, this visionary, I guess I would say, I don't know, Malik was saying about Mowalola. It's kind of like this isn't as much an aesthetic that people are feeling represents their personality and their like, you know, a part of themselves. It's something external that they want to be a part of, that they see happening, that invigorates them. And it isn't to say that that is inherently like wrong and like a more flawed experience of fashion, but it's good to know the difference, like to know that like no, this isn't gonna, like, this aesthetic isn't meant to last, to be a person's aesthetic for a lifetime. This is a part of someone's life that is being celebrated. This is I mean, obviously a lot of these things are tied to identity. So you know, not everything is like temporary like that, but a lot of these things feel like something that represents youth, or you know, um, this sort of temporary transient beauty, and these things like even like being skinny, you know, it's like it's not shied from that. There was like what was it? It was like four slim bodies on the shirt, and it's like it's not shying away that these ideals that are so you know, classist, ableist, blah blah blah, are transient. It's just kind of like celebrating being there, because at the end of the day, it is this party. It's not meant to be your identity. You can't get confused. But when you really want to party, like why not party all the way, and that's kind of what I think she's selling people is like make the most of it, be the sexiest you can with what you have. You know, if you can be sexy, you know, be sexy. If you're skinny, wear clothing that shows that you're skinny and talk about it and don't be, you know, just pretending like you're not, you know, glamorizing the fact that you don't have weight in a world that's already very critical of people that have weight. But just kind of recognize that this is a temporary place that you're at and give off this aesthetic that you are recognizing the temporariness and kind of indulging in it, kind of consuming it, rather than pretending this is something that will last you your lifetime. I think that's kind of valid, if I'm being honest. I don't think anybody needs to think that any of these things are forever. And I don't think it's healthy to want to be any of these things for your entire life. Skinny, you know, drug addicted. I'm joking. But, you know, it's not something that this lifestyle, the party lifestyle, is not something that's obviously sustainable for life. I mean, for a good amount of your life, but not like a, you know, like when you're taking drugs. I mean, not everybody is, but a lot of people who are like in these lifestyles are taking drugs at the end of the day. When you're doing that, it's kind of just like, you know that you're putting yourself at risk in a way, if you sustain this in the long run, more than, you know, I don't know. And I just think it is kind of represented in this design in a way that makes it not feel like something like Brandy Melville that's actually really exclusive and like hateful towards fat bodies, because that's like a lifestyle brand, you know. I think it's a weird thing. But like that wet tank top, I do think it was like a summer moment. I personally, no offense to anybody, I'm joking, but I saw that for $20 on Kanye West's website, and I've been kind of interested in the Crash collection by Mowalola. I like that it was inspired by that weird movie, even though that movie scared me, the Crash movie. But I like that it was inspired by that. But anyways, I'm really digressing. I had been into that, and so when they had dropped the wet tank top, I had bought one because it was really cool, and it did feel like, you know, this tank top is not something that can last a long time. Like, it's very thin. It's very, it's like stretches, so obviously it's not. Anything that stretches, I think, isn't going to last very long. Unless you, like, treat it probably or something. But it did feel like this moment. Like, it was $20, it's for the summer, and it's like, I hate to say it, but, like, me personally, I lost a bit of weight, and it was kind of like, oh, well, I know this isn't gonna last forever, but neither is this tank top, and it's kind of like, well, both of these things are mirroring each other, and it doesn't feel like I'm wearing something that's saying, hey, like, I'm skinny year round. This is like, I'm skinny for the summer. Like, you know, this is like a fun. I don't know. It didn't. I think these ideas are in a world where nowadays we have so much kind of like control, really, over how we look in the worst way sometimes. I think it's better to acknowledge that and kind of almost poke fun at the temporary nature of that, so that people go back to inherently valuing like permanence and like identity. And I do like that people see there's to be like an evilness in this temporariness. Or I keep using these same words, but I do like that people perceive there to be an evil nature in things like Mowalola that are so indulgent of a moment. Because it reminds me of Faust, like the book where like the devil says, if I can get you to give up everything for one moment, I win to God or whatever. Like, and the whole idea of that trade is that the devil wants you to value like a moment more than eternity and something that exists in this world, because everything exists in this world temporarily. They want you to value something that exists temporarily in this world more than your potential to have eternity. And that's kind of like the nature of sin in a way. So it is demonic, and it's not like wrong to call it demonic. It's just like that's kind of like what even the nature of like demons are to a lot of religious people. It's kind of like these entities that are emblematic of ideas like that value the material world more than your kind of like salvation, you know, and your eternity, which is a cool idea for me to like explore, to be honest. I always thought that was cool, but oh, I'm stressing. But I like it. I like the demonicness a little bit. I think everybody likes to see a little demonicness in fashion. It's always been a little bit of a cool exploration. And even in art, like to see kind of like the battle of good and evil, and like I really like in this new show Grotesquerie. It's like a Ryan Murphy show. I think unfortunately I've been really obsessed with a lot of Ryan Murphy shows over the course of my life. It's kind of like a lot like Sam Levinson to me, where like he's really controversial, but I've always unfortunately really enjoyed the content that's being given. So I can't really hate as much as I have to like critically observe. Um, but to kind of explain the connection to that, there's this really evil figure in that show. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's kind of like a priestly figure that's very evil, and there's a kind of seduction that happens, and that's kind of the similar idea where like that feels so evil to be looking at. It doesn't feel like it represents anything good or like holy, and you almost think like, why would you want to watch this, and why is this so satisfying? And obviously, it is also like a little erotic, but beyond the erotic nature, like I don't think I was there like horny. I felt really kind of fascinated that like in real life, I can now, after watching this, envision something so evil happening actually in so much detail, and it's kind of like this interesting this idea with like the apple in the garden of Eden. It's kind of like now that we know things, we can be evil or whatever. The knowledge of good and evil or whatever. Like to know whatever. But it was felt like a really cool. Like I don't know where that show's really going. It's a very cool, very strange show. I actually recommend anybody watch it. But I think there's a kind of a really cool psychological thing that happens when we feel like we're looking at something really evil, where we feel like we're preparing almost. Maybe I'm wrong, but I almost feel like spiritually, I'm like I'm building this. Okay, that's ridiculous. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like there's this kind of endurance to the shock of evil that we need to build, like to be mature adults that can handle these things in our waking lives. But yeah, Grotesquerie, very good show. The other show I've been watching, which is kind of random, is Twin Peaks. That show's like obviously old, so I'm not like the first one to watch that show ever. I mean, I'm not the first one to watch like any show ever, but it does feel really cool how. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. Um, it does feel very cool how that show, like the characters are really mysterious in Twin Peaks in a way that actually is uh like modern. Like for an old show, a lot of these characters, like I don't know if you guys ever watched it, if anybody agrees, like the florist, he feels like a quirky, weird like incel from the 21st century. So that always trips me out, but also even the idea of Laura Palmer I find really fascinating. Like this girl who exists in such a safe environment that she's fascinated and like almost like aroused by danger in a way that's really scary and like leads to a dangerous outcome, but is kind of a product of this unspokenness of the evils of the world when you live in this amazing, perfect, idyllic world that isn't actually separate from evil itself. And I don't know where they're going. I think there's a lot of paranormal, supernatural stuff that happens, and maybe there's kind of like a Jennifer's Body-esque monstrosity to Laura Palmer in how she operates, and maybe she's kind of like, you know, in this fascinating way that I think a lot of people who are, I'll put myself in this category, it's very strange, but sometimes people who are kind of like drawn to more risky or dangerous things in their childhood or like youth, they kind of have this envision that um, that they have this actual kind of agency that is unseen and like almost kind of like a power in the situation that they gain even when it looks like they're kind of helpless. And it's kind of this weird paradoxical like this spiritual like baiting of like if there's any angels around, like come and save me. It's very scary, very dark, but like it's a strange thing that happens where like people who are actually, I'll put myself in this bubble and it's very weird for me to talk about actually. But like I know when I was younger and I was like, I'm innocent in that way. Like I'm not the one wrong to be kind of engaging in situations with either like drugs or whatever, and like kind of like with older people. Like I'm not the one wrong to be in that place. And so it's kind of like uh in a spiritual way, like I know like, I don't feel any shame or any guilt about where I am, and it's like please protect me. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I don't know if that's kind of what's going on with Laura Palmer, and like I would find it interesting if it was this idea that she developed this darkness or this power supernaturally to protect her when she's in these dark situations of her own kind of like choosing. And it feels a little bit kind of like a divine thing if it's that, like an angel kind of looked after her, even if it's kind of like sinister. Maybe it's like a this idea that like a fallen angel felt so bad for her that it saved her. You know, this dark idea that kind of like in Death Note, like an angel would fall for a human so that it could save them. I don't know. But I think that would be really cool. And if that's not what it is, that feels like a really cool thing that I hope somebody explores one day. Um, and also, I think it invented like Pretty Little Liars. Like, I like this, and it's really creepy, but this like kind of this exploration of someone who looks like such a perfect victim and like such a sad, like such a mysteriously disappeared like figure type of thing who's like you know, in this a lot of these instances it's like a prom queen or someone like involved in like in the culture of their school in a very pure and kind of like non-obscured way. I think it's interesting to see these people turn into these figures associated with darkness in media in this way that explores like how the psyche kind of fetishizes like these taboo or kind of dark or dangerous ideas when they're not um, allowed to be explored, and how maybe it's really dangerous to not address or to have a culture that fetishizes these pure women and kind of like what they're seen as before it's realized that they're something darker, like what Allison and them are kind of like known as in the first or a few, beginning things before we realize that they actually had these powers or quote unquote, even though these are just teenage girls. Like a lot of times it's very interesting. We come to like to be scared of them or see them as so powerful, and it's like they're only operating within structures that other people have set in place. And yes, it's like it is a power and it's something that they wield kind of like to hurt people a lot of times. But no, I don't think they're to blame because they are children. Um, and I think that's a cool thing to explore. Like even in like Jennifer's body, like she's a child at the end of the day. We forget this, and she was assaulted, and that's what made her, as a result of this like ritual, be this monster. Is she evil? I don't think so. I think it's a trauma and kind of like realization of the power she has, unfortunately, as a result of the trauma that kind of represents like a lot of people's kind of like messed up coming of age where they realize they can be this darker figure than they want to be, or someone involved in darker things than they want to be because they were forced to be exposed to that, and that's their trauma. But it made them feel like they had this ability or these connections that they wouldn't have otherwise if it's like a thing like that. Like in kind of Laura Palmer's case where like she's doing drugs and like she has these connections because she interacted with this darkness, it makes it feel like it was worth it when even it really is a danger, and we don't want to see anybody involved in these things when they're children. I mean, even as adults, but I don't think it's as serious as when it's like a child being taken advantage of by someone older. And so I think these media, even though it feels really glamorizing to the figures, I think the people who really consume it have this interesting like thought process of like, um, was there really like eventually when you get older, was there really a power in this person that I was seeing as so, sinister and powerful? Or did I want them to have a power because they represented something that I wish I could have changed about my trauma? Or, do I want them to have agency because I went through something similar traumatic wise, like trauma wise, and I don't feel any sense of agency about it. Um, and I don't think it's a bad thing to feel like to be like, to feel like these things aren't things that happen to you, but things that you were, unfortunately involved with. Like to some extent, it's like you're gonna if you feel like you're lying to yourself by saying that you had no role in the things that happened to you, I think it's better to not feel like you're lying to yourself in the ways that you cope than it is to try and tell yourself that you shouldn't feel how you feel. I don't know if you know what I mean. And so I think if you have to cope and see yourself as having had this agency and power, um, and in a way that doesn't clash with the actual emotional processing of what happened to you, I think that's really interesting to explore. I think it makes you feel like you did survive something that's hard to survive. And it's not untrue that when you go through something like this, whatever it is that has to do with this kind of like abuse of you or this kind of over these kind of like these violations, I'll put it like that, of people of when you felt like you were innocent, like these things represent a feeling of injustice that we have that make us feel like we would have deserved to have become this really sinister figure because it wasn't our fault if we did. And that's, I think, true. And I think it's kind of beautiful that we can look at these things in pop culture, and that they actually do gain popularity and eventually lead to discourse, even though I don't think a lot of the discourse and like what, whatever. But, I will maybe address just a little bit. I saw this movie opening night. I mean, I know everybody's talking about it, but I really did like, obviously, the substance. I mean, obviously is a strong word, but I like Margaret Qualley, okay? I think it's cool when a hot actor uh is not afraid to play a role that is really indulgent in the fact that they are hot. I think it shows a lot of maturity when they dedicate themselves to that role and actually give a really solid performance. And I think it's really more of a celebration than a fetishization in this case because of the way that it actually promoted really fascinating discourse. And like even with Demi Moore and who's kind of like older and is not the person as glamorized, I've only seen good things online about her appearance and just like by people who feel really inspired by how she acted that role and just like how it does address all of these issues of body image and aging and the way that for women this is such an accentuated like issue, especially women who are in media, and whose bodies are literally their brand. I think that's what this illustrated is like when you have been brainwashed by this industry where your body is your brand, that is your ideal. When you could have one chance to do it over, you want your body to be your brand again and you want to do it better. And you want to have a plan this time and you want to be, on TV and you want to do things faster. And it's kind of like it's really fascinating. It's this addiction and it's not healthy. It's like you wish you had done things more. You don't wish you had chosen a different path, even though these people didn't respect you. They dropped you, and you know they will again. That's the fascinating part. But this time, kind of like with this whole Mowalola thing, you're valuing the transient nature of your experience more than you are hoping it'll last. And I think that's really fascinating about Sue's character, and I think that's what she represents in line with this whole Mowalola-esque grouping of ideas. Is just this way that we will come to realize our society wanted us and promoted for us and instills in us constantly, and we kind of need to deconstruct maybe, or we can just enjoy it. This idea that to enjoy a party is worth our money, is worth our time, is worth, money that we spent time to work for, and represents a kind of culmination of our efforts, and it's a celebration that we deserve. And it's this, and Sue is just such a I guess indulgent character, and when you see her on that TV show, she's so confident because she knows everything about how people perceive her, and she knows how this can benefit her, how it doesn't benefit her, but she chooses to really delve into the ways that this benefits her to the max and create this persona that is perfect for the ideals of other people because it makes her feel this youth that she knows and that she has experienced, but now she's getting to feel it the most she ever could have. And I think that's what people feed into when they buy Mowalola's clothes is they feel like I'm skinny. This is the best way I can be skinny. This is the hottest way I can be skinny. This is the best I can look as skinny. And this is the most I can be cognizant of the fact that I'm skinny while being skinny. This is the least cancelable way I can be skinny in a paradoxical way because I don't give a fuck. I'm not doing it in front of people and trying to be fake about it. I'm being skinny in Mowalola clothes that are made for skinny people. And it's not, something that I'm trying to pretend is accessible. It's my life right now, and I'm enjoying it. And you can be sick and disgusted if you watch that and that doesn't make you feel like you're enjoying yours. But at the end of the day, when all the shit is put to the side, when everything is said and done, we are both living the same life under the same set of guidelines, and neither of us are thriving because we are both working. Sue is still working, even if she's being celebrated for being a baddie. She is working. She's not, she doesn't own her content. She's working for someone. And it's this idea that we come to hate her because she has, or at least, Elizabeth comes to hate her because she has everything and she's, taking more from the old person. But she's the one who didn't even choose to exist. I mean, if we're gonna see them as two separate people, like Sue is this illusion, and if we're gonna see them as the same person, and that they have the same psyche, even though one does kill the other one, which is very complex. But if we were to see them as the same psyche, it is kind of like, awful to say, but she's literally not doing anything when she's old. No offense. Like she tries to go on that date, but she doesn't end up doing it. It's like she's been paralyzed, and it's definitely, I think, also representative of like addiction and like even like I think of like stimulants, like things like amphetamines and like cocaine that make people skinnier and all these things. It's kind of like these people who try and get sober are really impeded, and it makes it hard to get sober because you want to be a part of that same life that you were, even if you're not sober. But you physically can't because you don't have that same access. You're not seen the same way by people. And you literally just don't have the energy because when you're in recovery from these things, like, you realize that your body's been, like, hurt. Like, it's like you need to heal. So I don't know. I think this movie represents so many things. I mean, people talk about it representing estrogen. It's like there's so many ways you can interpret it. But at the end of the day, we all consume substances like in this kind of like gender affirmation way of like I think it all comes down to awfully like gender in a weird way, and I hate to be like a really gender focused person, but when we talk about like our bodies, we care more about how we are seen like with regards to our like fertility even. Like that's crazy to say, but like that's what a lot of people break it down to. But like our health, it's like it comes down to like fertility in a weird way. It's like, do you look like someone that's like able to bear children? Like, do you give daddy? Do you give mommy? It's very strange. But we wanna be, enticing. We wanna make people think of sex when they look at us, and so it's kind of like we've commodified this really sort of an exclusive kind of like elegance and seductivity that maybe we should be a little bit more private with. I don't know. And so I don't really know where I got to that subject from. But I think it is in the substance very interesting that like it's just called the substance. Like we can think of substances as so many different things. We can think of it as drugs, as hormones, as chemicals, just chemicals, like just things that aren't. You can think of it as something that is or isn't meant to be biologically consumed, and that's what's really interesting. A lot of this is left in the nuance, and even I love that we don't know if they're the same mind. Like, what if they're actually just like one mind the whole time, and even when she kills her, she chooses which one gets to kill the other one. Like, she chooses she wants to be the old one in that moment. Like, that would be really fascinating if she had to choose to let a part of herself be killed by the other one. That would be really complex because how do you acquiesce a part of yourself to another? And what does it represent in this situation? I mean, it's kind of like when Margaret. I'm really spoiling the movie, so I'm gonna stop actually right there. But it is just a very interesting idea to get into, and I obviously saw a lot of um, just really cool acting and like just like inspiring. I feel like work from these people. Like I feel like these people are really coming to put on a performance that defines their career, and it's not just like another. I think a lot of actors nowadays and just a lot of people are really serious about what they want, and I think it's because we realized, how much these things may not last in the long run, that we feel so much more like grateful, and I love to see it, and I love to feel like this exuberance that people have, almost like we don't. I feel like shy from the fact that like the earth is warming and things like that. I just think now, even though it feels like we're hiding from it, the way that our cognizance is manifested is in this accentuated desire to celebrate and to make the most of the world that we do have while we still have it, which is dark in a way because we end up consuming way more fast. But it still leads to, I think, this more loving environment between people because we all just want to have our fucking fun. No one's trying to hurt anybody, I think, as much as they're trying to have, enough money to have fun and for their families and friends to be having fun, which is an interesting thing to think about. I mean, I think it's a little more serious than that. But I think, to be in health is to be able to have fun. And we all have our goals. And I think maybe our goals are going to matter more than temporary fun to everybody at some point in their life. But right now, the world likes to have fun. And it's kind of seen as like cool if you're able to be cognizant of everything and still have a life. In a lot of different, times of humanity, I think it's very cool to not have a life when you really care about something. But right now, people want to have a life. People want to have goals and still party, which is really cool, I think. But I think I might personally need to start focusing on my goals a little more when it comes to like school and setting myself up in my career path. But I don't know. I just think as a 20-year-old myself, like I like to see ways that people felt or feel about their youth to kind of appreciate these things while they're happening. Which is a weird thing to say. I mean, obviously I'm young, haha. But like it's kind of like I do want to be a grateful person and a person who recognizes the temporary nature of these things, but without being like freaked out or scared or like a weirdo, I want to be a normal person about everything. And I want to make people feel like happy when they see me. And I want to make old people feel like I'm enjoying my life because they love to see that. They do. What did the comments say about me? I think I was doing good. Hugo, suck it. Sorry, I don't usually talk like that. I was doing fucking good though. I did good. I met my lollipop. Weirdo. I think I have to stop there because this is getting a little weird. But that was my raw, uncut, lengthy entertainment for you all. I hope and if somebody consumes it. Oh, that sounds really weird actually. Not consumes it. I hope someone takes it in. I'm gonna shut up. But yeah, and this is just some Overwatch to give you some visuals while I was doing that. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. If anybody does, I'm not even gonna promote this, so let's see if anybody sees this. But yeah, thank you. Bye.